Hey folks, wish I see you up here in New Hampshire. I had a couple of requests from subscribers who wanted some feedback and input on how they would select a gun for concealed carry. What I've done and what I do with my students when asked this question is actually respond with some questions back to them. So one of the things that's important to do is really look at the fact that the smaller the handgun that we use, the more that it is a compromise from a full-size gun. A full-size gun is going to make it easier for the user to manipulate the gun, to shoot the gun accurately, and to deploy it quickly, safely, and effectively. When we start moving to smaller size guns, then we have really the challenge brought on by physics. Smaller the handgun, the more felt recoil that we're going to incur, and the more difficult it's going to be to manipulate the gun itself, particularly under stress. So, things to consider when purchasing a gun for concealed carry. First one is make sure that you're in compliance with whatever local and state laws that apply to you. So if you need a permit or a license, make sure that you do that first. It's important to follow the law. Number two, with whatever firearm that you select, train with it. And I don't mean just go to the range and shoot a few, but go to a specific class on concealed carry with an instructor who can help you develop the kinds of skills that will be really practical to your needs. Number three, think through what you are going to need to do in terms of carrying that type of firearm. Are you going to carry it outside the waistband? Are you going to carry it perhaps on an inside the waistband holster? Is the position of that gun at 2 o'clock, an appendix carry at 4 o'clock? Perhaps it's under in a shoulder rig. So whatever that is, you need to think through that. You need to understand whether or not that gun will stay concealed if you bend over or slide to the side. Remember, in most states, if that firearm is not concealed, you may be arrested for brandishing a firearm. So tactically, it also doesn't make any sense to expose that firearm to anybody out there. It's just not a good decision. So there are a whole lot of different firearms out there, and certainly, you can go from anything to a full-size 1911 and carry that to, the Ruger LCP in 380. Would this gun be better than this gun? Well, I would say it depends. If I can carry this gun with me and shoot it effectively and get hits on target, accurate shot placement, absolutely it is better. The advantage that a small gun like this has, of course, is that you're more likely to carry it with you because it's small and it can be concealed in a pocket holster like this one, which means you're going to have that firearm with you, God forbid that you need it. So when people are talking to me about concealed carry options or the right gun, I want to make a point, and this is what I say to these folks, students of mine, is first of all, the larger the handgun that you have, the easier it is to manipulate. Number two, your level of confidence is directly related to the proficiency with which you train on that weapon system. So generally, a full-size handgun like a Glock 17 or the M&P series, or the XD, or SIGs, on and on, and Browning, whatever the manufacturer is, that full-size handgun is going to be easier for you to gain a level of proficiency with, which will lead to your confidence level, which is a key part of it. So one of the things that you can do is, if you start with a full-size handgun, which I generally recommend rather than buying the first gun that someone would buy, a small, super small, compact, I'd recommend going with a full-size handgun, whatever brand or make that is. Working to develop your skills so you're proficient with it, you understand the manual of arms, how to load, unload, how to clear malfunctions, how to get hits on target quickly and effectively. Secondly, once you've gained that level of confidence, then start looking or considering in the same line or the same system, in this case a Glock, you have a similar fire control system. It works exactly the same way. So once you're proficient with your large handgun, then moving to a smaller handgun, in this case a Glock 26, might be a good option to consider from a carry standpoint. Why? Well, this is larger, it's bulkier, it's more likely to print than the Glock 26 or some other version of a compact, which is easier to conceal. Guess what? I can shoot a full-size handgun much more effectively than I can a smaller compact version. However, if I start and learn and practice on a full size, those skills will transfer, assuming we've got the same brand, the same type of platform, to that smaller gun. So that would be one thing to really think about how you're going to do that. As I mentioned before, once you've established that and you've got that level of training and confidence on a full-size handgun, then moving to a smaller handgun certainly is a great way to proceed. You want to make sure, though, that you are totally safe with the firearm and with presenting it. What I've noticed with many of the people that I work with is they don't spend much time getting the gun, presenting the gun from holster or from however they carry the gun. And really, that's one of the most important things you do. Hopefully, you would follow what I consider the most valuable thing from a fighting standpoint, which is run, hide, fight. If I can get away, perfect. If I can run away and avoid the conflict, great. If I can hide from that fight, great. If I have to fight, then I need to be proficient in terms of getting that firearm out, hopefully using verbal commands to stop the threat or neutralize the threat before I'd actually have to fire. So that's the sequence that I like to use, run, hide, fight. So once a student is confident in the larger handguns, looking at some of the smaller platforms, but recognizing that as you go smaller, right, smaller and lighter, that means you're going to have more felt recoil. More felt recoil means you may not want to shoot as much, which means your proficiency related to that specific sidearm may not be what you need it to do. So whatever gun that you select, whatever platform that is, you must, absolutely must get training with someone qualified who can help you develop those skills and monitor whether or not you're safely presenting the sidearm in such a way that it is, number one, safe, and number two, is going to allow you to get hits on target. So what I would strongly encourage you to do is go to a gun shop, try different, feel how they feel, and then get together with a buddy or with some people and, at the range and shoot a number of different guns. And if you can, get together with someone that has holsters. In this case, this is an M&P, this is a Comtac 2 o'clock holster, one of my favorite ways to carry this gun. It's very flat, very low profile, it's right up in front, you can simply rip your shirt up, present the gun. But you need to actually practice that so that you have that level of confidence and proficiency in carrying. In terms of what size of gun is the right size, I would say it all depends. What's your clothing, what's the condition that you're carrying in, and what's the situation around you as far as people. Are you in an office environment? Are you in your car? All those kinds of things are factors. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a full-size revolver in .357 from an everyday carry standpoint or a concealed carry standpoint. It can absolutely be concealed. It's just a little more challenging to conceal this than it is that. And so as we're looking at options for carry and selecting that right type of carry gun for those of you who have the license or permit to do so, you really need to think, what kind of clothes am I wearing? How do I keep this concealed? Am I wearing, for example, a fanny pack? Is it a pocket carry? If it is a pocket carry, does the holster I'm using protect the trigger and make sure that I can't get anything across that trigger? Is it an inside the waistband type of holster that's riding down on the inside that can be covered up fairly easily? So these are all things that you need to consider. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you when doing this is, again, seek some trainers who have done this and work with other people who have selected this. What works for me based on my physical frame may not work for you. There are some people who because of their size, and they're just, they're big, really strong people. They have no problem whatsoever carrying this, relatively heavy 1911 style gun concealed on them. You just don't see it. For me, this thing tends to print and stick out just because of my frame and the style of carry that I have. So based on that, selecting another type of firearm has generally worked better for me. The second thing to think about as it relates to which type of gun is you may want to carry more than one gun. So the Ruger LCP is not my primary carry gun. I generally like another type of firearm, in this case the M&P Shield, or something like the M&P 9C, but something that's a little larger, again, easier to manipulate, longer sight radius, easier to run the gun if something doesn't work in terms of malfunction. Those are all things that I'm thinking about when selecting. And then the Ruger is with me as a backup. Again, guns malfunctions, you could shoot that gun dry and need another gun. But the super small ones are not my primary carry unless clothing dictates that that's the only firearm I can bring with me. So hopefully this rant provides you a perspective on some of the things to think about. Again, we want to make sure that we've got the proper licenses or permits needed in your state to be compliant. Number 2, we want to make sure that we have training. Number 3, my recommendation is start with a full-size handgun and work your way down within that family, particularly as it relates to the trigger and the action of that particular pistol. If you're shooting Glocks, right, you start with a Glock 17 and you go down to a Glock 26 or Glock 27 and 40. It's going to be easier for you because everything's the same. Similarly with revolvers, if we're running a full-size revolver, a Smith & Wesson 686, right, and then we transition to the airweight, we've got a very similar trigger and a similar action in terms of the way in which that we manipulate that gun and load and unload it. So those things are important considerations as you're looking for a gun for concealed carry. I want to thank you all for watching, and as always, stay safe.